You're watching the Community MMA.
What up, what up? This your boy Crisscross checking in, and guess what? Fight week is back in the UFC after about a month layoff for the holidays. And you got Nassourdine Imavov taking on Kelvin Gastelum in the first main event of the year. But before we even get into that, we got breaking news this morning, and this one is a shocker. Ladies and gentlemen, Khabib Nurmagomedov says he has plans to retire as an MMA coach. So you know he in the UFC, or in MMA as a whole, he was 29-0 and kind of retired early after the win over Justin Gaethje. Now his protege, if you will, Islam Makhachev, captured the lightweight belt, and now he says he has plans to retire as an MMA coach. It's unclear if he'll be in the corner with Makhachev at UFC 284, but he has plans to retire because he wants to spend more time with his family. You can imagine running Eagle FC and coaching all these great athletes like in Islam Makhachev. He's spending a lot of time away from home, and now it's time for him to spend time with his family. So that's breaking news today. We were just getting ready to kick off the podcast, and we were looking up some news, see what's going on at the last minute, and this one was a big one. So Khabib Nurmagomedov will officially retire as an MMA coach, and he will deeply be missed in both the UFC and MMA as a whole. Now, his coach Mendez, I'm sure, will take over coaching Islam Makhachev if he wasn't already doing so, and I'm sure Islam will be fine. But it certainly hurts to lose a guy like Khabib from your corner at a time in which you're at your height in the sport. So that's breaking news today. But let's waste no time. Let's get into it. UFC Fight Night, first fight night or first fight card of the year, 2023 style. And it'll kick off with Nassourdine Imavov taking on Kelvin Gastelum. It's a big middleweight division fight. Imavov is a guy that's on the rise. He's number 12 in the division. Kelvin Gastelum, number 13. So let's get right into that prediction on the show today, and we'll come back and break the fight down. In the middleweight division at UFC Fight Night, this is your main event. You got Nassourdine Imavov coming in 12-3. He's a number 12 contender taking on Kelvin Gastelum. Comes in at 17-8. He's a number 13 contender. So you got a 12 versus 13 here in the middleweight division. Now, Imavov is going to be considerably taller than Gastelum, 6'3 versus 5'9. That's a huge difference. He's also got a 4-inch reach advantage. He fights right-handed against Gastelum, who is a southpaw or fights left-handed. Now, Imavov has an advantage in the striking, landing about 4.1 significant strikes per minute compared to 3.5 for Gastelum. But Gastelum has a slight advantage, although it's barely an advantage. Both guys land like one takedown over the course of 3 rounds. So don't expect takedowns to be a big deal. And Imavov has the advantage on the feet. He also stops 3 out of 4 takedowns with a 75% takedown defense. He's got some momentum as well, too. Coming off the win over Joaquin Buckley. Knockout specialist, beat him by decision. Landing 2 takedowns, outstriking him 51-46. He also beat Edmund Shabazian by second round knockout, and Ian Heinisch by knockout. His last loss was to Phil Hawes by majority decision, and that's because he gave up 4 takedowns against Phil Hawes. So that's something to keep in mind. But he's come back over the last 3 and looked like a different fighter. Now, Gastelum, 62% takedown defense. We'll see if that matters. I think Gastelum's going to try to shoot for takedowns in this fight and see if he can use that as a weapon for himself in this fight. Now, Gastelum coming off the loss to Jared Cannonier, which is crazy because he outstruck him 89-81. That got Cannonier the title shot, which he lost to Israel Adesanya. He also lost to Robert Whittaker. Wasn't even close. 4 takedowns by Whittaker, 150 significant strikes, a 62 for Gastelum. But he also did beat Ian Heinisch, and the difference is here he beat Heinisch by decision, not by knockout. So, all these reasons, you look at takedown defense in favor of Imavov. You look at significant strikes per minute in favor of Imavov. He KO'd Ian Heinisch, a common opponent they both had. Gastelum took him to a decision, but he did land 6 takedowns. That's the only concern I have in this fight, is that Kelvin Gastelum can and likely will shoot for takedowns in this fight, and Imavov will have to play defense in that regard. And as long as he does that and keeps the fight standing, he is going to win and move to 13-0, in my opinion, here in the middleweight division at UFC Fight Night. Yeah, so I mean, this is an undefeated fighter. Kelvin Gastelum, though, is no easy out. I expect this to be a tougher fight than most people would expect. I do expect Nurmagomedov to win, but Kelvin Gastelum is a tough fighter, and at any time he can get a finish. I mean, I think it was it Jack Hermanson when he got the leg lock? Or whatever you call it. I might be wrong on that, but a surprising win there. He's fought the best of the best, so it's not going to be like he hasn't been in the octagon against some real fighters. But the reality is, Nurmagomedov will remain undefeated, in my opinion. Now, you got multiple big fights on this card, but another one with Dan 50K Ige taking on Damon Jackson. Ige's been struggling lately, another guy that fights top-notch competition. But, we'll see how this fight goes, but let's get into that prediction right now. In the featherweight division at UFC Fight Night, you got Dan 50K Ige coming in at 15-6, taking on Damon Jackson, comes in at 22-4. Both these guys heading in a different direction right now. Momentum-wise, Ige's dropped like 4 of the last 5, and Damon Jackson's won 4 in a row. So we'll see how this plays out in this fight. Now, Damon Jackson, 4 inches taller at 5'11". Both guys have an equal reach at 71 apiece. Damon Jackson is a switch stance fighter where Ige fights right-handed. Now, significant strikes per minute goes to Dan Ige. He's going to land about 1 more significant strike per minute than Damon Jackson. That's about 15 over the course of 3 rounds. But Damon Jackson lands more takedowns. He's good for about a takedown per round, where Dan Ige is about half that. He's looking to get a takedown every 2 rounds, at least based on the averages. Now, both guys have terrible down defense, 51% for Dan Ige, just 42% for Damon Jackson. So keep that in mind. That's going to influence the ability for both fighters to land more takedowns. Now, 50K Ige has lost 3 in a row, losing to Movsarov-Loev. Good fighter, right? Josh Emmett fighting for the interim title. The Korean Zombie. He's lost all 3 of those by decision, but in most cases fought well, except giving up 9 takedowns to Movsarov-Loev, and that did not help the takedown defense average for sure. His last win was against Gavin Tucker, who he KO'd. He also lost to Calvin Kattar. So this is why he's getting, he's number 13 contender. This is why he's getting unranked Damon Jackson, because he's struggled a little bit lately, falling in the rankings, having trouble cracking that top 10. But Damon Jackson is on the rise, beating Pat Sabatini by KO. Dan Argueta, unanimous decision. Camuela Kirk, submission, and Charles Boston Strong Rosa by decision. So the one difference, though, here we got to keep in mind is that the level of fights that these 2 guys are fighting are completely different. I mean, on one end, Dan Ige has lost 4 of the last 5, but he's fighting really strong competition. Damon Jackson's won 4 in a row. He's not fighting a stronger competition. In fact, his last loss was to Ilia Topuria by first-round knockout back in December of 2020. So, and then he beat Mirsad Bektik before that. But, it makes the fight hard to predict because their momentum is a factor, but Dan Ige has better competition. And for that reason, I think Dan Ige is going to get back into win column here. And it's nothing against Damon Jackson because he's a really good fighter. And if he can win this, it's 5 in a row. More power to him. But Dan Ige, to me, is the better fighter. He faces tougher competition and likely will win the fight for those reasons to move to 16-6. In my opinion, likely by decision. I think these are 2 well-rounded fighters. It's going to be tough for either guy to get a finish here in the featherweight division at UFC Fight Night. Man, tough prediction there. With 50K Ige struggling, Damon Jackson won 4 in a row. And this fight could really go either way. I mean, I was watching a prediction back here along with you, and I'm like, please pick Damon Jackson. Please pick Damon Jackson, because I forgot who I picked. A lot of times that happens, because in these fights like this, they're so close that we'll make the prediction a few days ago, and then I forget who I picked, especially if it's not the main event. The main event's the one I track, right? Last year going like 25-11 in the main event. So hopefully we can keep that continued this year. We got off to a strong start last year, like 17-2. So as you get down into other fights, I often forget who I pick, but Dan 50K Ige has faced a tough competition, and I believe he will win this fight. So we'll have to wait and see how this plays out. So a lot of other things going on in the UFC, like, Khamzat Chimaev still waiting for a fight, and people are getting upset about this topic. Make no mistake about it. You got Kenneth Bruner weighing in just a day ago. This making Khamzat wait is starting to make me resent the UFC as an organization. He needs to fight 3 times this year. He needs a Pereira fight by March. Otherwise, we are looking at a bad situation with Ramadan happening in late spring. This is why the Burns fight turned out the way it did at 273. And I forgot about that. Maybe he struggled because he was in the middle of Ramadan. Ideally, he needs his schedule to be March, July, November. I say forget 170 for now. That's the welterweight division. Too much drama with Usman and Edwards and Colby. Title shot at 185 now. And you got to figure, if you're waiting on welterweight, you're going to wait forever. And then Jared Cannonier came out the other day and said he's got to fight a top 3 guy to get a title shot. Well, he did that in the welterweight, and he's still not getting a title shot. So forget Jared Cannonier, forget Robert Whittaker, forget Adesanya, go right for Pereira. And when you look at his other fights recently, the last 4, 3 of them first-round finishes. The only one was the unanimous decision against Burns, which was controversial. And, he's cutting weight. He's not eating for half the day when the sun is up. And that had an effect on his stamina, but he still grinded out the win. So maybe the Burns fight goes a different way if he's not in the middle of Ramadan. That's the bottom line. But the UFC is not handling Khamzat Chimaev right. I don't know if he's had a falling out with the UFC or something is going on, but you would think a Khamzat Chimaev title fight would be huge in terms of people watching, people paying the pay-per-view to watch it. I don't see a bigger fight right now than Khamzat Chimaev against anyone unless Conor McGregor comes back, because he's still the king of pay-per-view regardless of his struggles lately. But Khamzat Chimaev versus anyone would be a huge draw. Make no mistake about it. Now, as we get into some other comments, you got Mo Larry Curley. Who wants to see rematches? Not me. Leon versus Khamzat, Bilal versus Usman, Burns versus Colby, all on the same card. Colby won't fight Burns. He lost 2 title shots, so back of the line. Kenneth Bruner again. Khamzat must have a fight booked in February or March with Pereira, or if not, the UFC will try to screw him over by giving him a fight at 170 during Ramadan in April. And that's not going to be a good look for Khamzat or the UFC. Entertainer P. I'll give this fight to Hill. I don't think he will fumble this opportunity to become champ in his UFC 283 main event against Glover Teixeira. And what an opportunity that is for Jamal Hill. And man, I hope he wins so we can keep this division moving. And a Jamal Hill versus Yuri Prochazka down the line would be insane. Hashim Dahir. You think Bilal is ducking Khamzat? Because he keeps asking for the Leon fight. No, I don't think he's ducking him, but everyone's going after the champ right now, right? Everyone's trying to get a title fight, and you can't blame Bilal, who seems to be one of the best up-and-coming fighters right now. Not really up-and-coming, but on the move, on the rise. And, he wants a title shot right now. You can't blame him. You can't blame him. Bilal deserves a title shot. Khamzat deserves a title shot. But we're going to continually be waiting with all these rematches. And it gets old after a while, right? Rematch after rematch. And these are all 5th round fights that ended in finishes. Yuri Prochazka finished Glover Teixeira in the 5th round. Leon Edwards finished Usman in the 5th round. Pereira finished Adesanya in the 5th round. And yeah, they are 5th round finishes, but they're not decisions. So I don't think there should be an automatic rematch unless you go to a decision and it's a close fight, especially a controversial situation. You got to get a rematch. But even Amanda Nunes got a rematch after getting finished in the 2nd round. Now she came back and got the title. And you got to figure Usman and Adesanya have real good chances of getting the titles back in 2023. And then we're right back to where we were a year ago. So a lot of things are going to play out this year, but it's got multiple divisions on hold. And that's not a good look for the UFC. When you got all these up-and-coming fighters like Khamzat in the mix. You got Shavkat Rakhmonov. Thankfully, he's fighting Jeff Neal. He's in the mix. Bilal Muhammad is in the mix. Sean O'Malley defies all the topics when he wins a number one contender spot against Petr Yan, and he's still not fighting for the UFC. They're going to bring in Henry Cejudo, which is crazy. But that's just the way things are going right now with the UFC. These up-and-comers are not getting shots, and it's hard to explain why. It's real hard to explain why. But for now, let's leave it at that. We got a long week ahead. We'll be with you with podcasts throughout the week. Make sure you watch. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. For now, it's your boy Chris Cross. Have a great day and God bless. Peace.